Hi, my name is Evelyn Gonzalez Garcia, and my change special project is going to be about the treatment of immigrants at the southern U.S. border, specifically on the mass incarceration and just how detention facilities are. A little brief overview of what my presentation will be about, kind of what has led us to the issue of overcrowding in these detention centers, and the conditions of these detention centers, as well as why we need there to be a change, and some reform initiatives that have been taken in the past, as well as some current policies that Biden has been trying to push for. To start off with, there's been an increase in the amount of caravans that have been coming to the U.S. from Central America, the Caribbean, over the years. This September, there was about 10,000 people in one caravan that were headed to the U.S. Since then, there's been another caravan of about approximately 2,000 migrants and asylum seekers that are also mainly Central American and Caribbean, specifically from Haiti. And this is an issue not only for the U.S. but also for Mexico, because a lot of the Central American refugees are crossing through Mexican borders and such. So some little brief statistics on what's going down in Mexico. Mexico's Commission for Refugee Assistance received 100,000 applicants, which was a significant increase from other previous years. A little bit more of the stats is there's 13,000 migrant children in U.S. custody that were unaccompanied, just on their own. And another thing that's contributing to this big issue is that some countries are not letting their citizens return. One example that I read about was China, which was not allowing their citizens return once they were getting deported from the U.S., which is also a big issue because then, where do all these people go? Moving on to the horrible conditions. A lot of the migrants described there to be prison-like conditions in the detention centers in Mexico. And similar to Mexico, the conditions in the U.S. the facilities were not much better. Specifically because they're so overcrowded and just staffing is so overworked. There isn't enough resources or right going into these places to be able to withstand the amount of people that are being held there. So right now there's approximately 500,000 people in detention centers in the United States. But there are also 136,000 families that are being tracked by ICE through ankle monitoring devices. So it's as if they were on some sort of probation, with constant phone check-ins and then just ICE tracking them online and such. Another thing about the horrible conditions is that they've been physically, some detainees have reported being physically, psychologically, and sexually abused. So this within and of itself is something that really needs to be addressed by not only the government but the people hiring committees or anyone that has to do with background checks and staffing, because this shouldn't be going on in general. There were about 15,000 reports of abuse between 2010 and 2016. Again, abuse in general is something that's usually underreported. So this number could be sorry, excuse me, could be very insignificant, or not insignificant, but like very different from what the actual number is. So need for change. I feel like ICE definitely could use. I did read a lot of reports where a lot of the staffing was just very overwhelmed by the amount of people that they had into their care. So definitely just kind of getting more people to apply, or like promoting that there are jobs available in those detention facilities. I feel like another thing that would also need to change is kind of like getting these detention centers to be partnered with like nonprofits that can provide like either like some sort of like education at least, or just resources to help them deal with any traumas that they could have had traveling to the US, or like whatever they're trying to escape from their own countries. As I said before, there are a lot of the people in these caravans are asylum seekers. So just getting people either like mental health is a big thing, so just getting, like therapists or anything that could help the people in the detention centers. I know there are a lot of nonprofits out there, or like apps in general, just kind of like, getting them access to like a website or something where they can get help. There is one app that I know of, which is Liftly, which does provide access to like doctors and like mental health help, like through an app 24/7, so that would be a benefit. Another thing that would need to change too is just the conditions of the facilities. Like there needs to be more of a focus into maintaining these facilities and getting them properly sanitized and clean. Moving on to some reform initiatives. Currently, Biden is working on a Build Back Better Act, which is a $2 trillion dollar act. It would cost $2 trillion. This, of course, does not just include immigration. It includes all sorts of stuff, but I will be focusing just on the immigration portion of it. This would be the largest mass legalization program in the United States, and it would allow immigrants to get work permits, be able to travel, will have permission to travel outside the U.S. and then return, get them access to driver's licenses, and it would also protect 65% of the immigrant population in the U.S. from being deported. This is one of like the biggest acts that has like been closest to being passed so far. They are trying to make a decision before Christmas. So this is really something that everyone should kind of like have on their radar, not just because of the immigration portion, but also because just everything that like the act entails is pretty interesting. Again, there has not been an immigration reform act since the 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act that was passed by Reagan, or that was passed by the Reagan administration, in which 3 million immigrants were able to get a path to citizenship. So, I mean, I feel like from like reading this, Biden's definitely addressing more of like getting the immigrants to stay in the U.S., but I feel like he should also have addressed in the act the facilities and just improving the conditions, like and it's like stop treating them like criminals, as I mentioned in this slide. Like they're like being put like on with like ankle monitors and just being treated as if they were criminals when really they're not. They're trying to escape from traumas that they lived in their own country. That is all for my presentation. or for my special project. These are some of the resources I used. Most of them were from lecture notes and such from other classes, so I did not know how to include them here, but that was all. Thank you for listening.